Today, we're going to be taking a look at some players that the Chicago Bulls could potentially sign in free agency at the guard and wing position. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Monis Mazelis slam dunks in games, because in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it, as today we are taking a look at the guards and wings that the Chicago Bulls could potentially sign in free agency. And so before we take a look at the players, at the time of this podcast recording, all these players are still available. I'm not seeing anything that is linking them back to the teams that they were with, and I'm also not seeing anything that's linking them to new teams as well. And so we're first going to start off with players that have been linked to the Chicago Bulls prior to free agency starting on Tuesday. And so the first player that we're going to take a look at is going to be Norman Powell. And so it looks like that Hoops Hype has linked the Chicago Bulls to Norman Powell. And it says this: the Chicago Bulls are among the teams expected to have interest in Powell as free agency nears, league sources told Hoops Hype. The 33-year-old guard is a career 39.6% three-point shooter. The Detroit Pistons have also been linked to Powell as a potential suitor, yet it remains to be seen how the acquisition of Isaiah Joe could impact Detroit's pursuit of Powell. And so that's Hoops Hype. All right, so talking about Norman Powell and his potential fit with the Chicago Bulls, look, I like the fit a lot. I think that he would be a great addition for the Chicago Bulls. I know that this is early on in the rebuild, but I feel like that there are a lot of things that he brings to the table, and it's not just hitting the three-point shot. And so number one, three-point shooting is absolutely needed with the Chicago Bulls. And so certainly, just like it was talked about there at 39.3%, look, that's an excellent percentage here that you certainly want on your team. And so the fact that he can knock down that shot, it's going to space the floor, for our forwards and centers and everybody else, really. And the next thing with Norman Powell is that he's also a pretty good scorer from all levels. And so I think that he can hit the mid-range shot. He also, too, can get downhill. And so really, you're not just looking at a three-point specialist or a 3-and-D type of player. You're looking at a player that can score in all three levels. And so I think that certainly would help the Chicago Bulls. And the next thing with him are the things that he's bringing over to the roster that you can't measure in stats. And so number one, he's an NBA champion. And so when you go back and you take a look at what he did in 2019 with the Toronto Raptors there with Kawhi Leonard, they won the championship. And so I think that is something that you cannot measure in stats. And I think that really helps a younger roster, especially when you are trying to show them how to be a professional. And so I think that he would be perfect in those regards as far as the mentorship. The next thing is that you see that he just now was an all-star. And so I think that shows you that his game is continuing to get better. I'm not saying that he's a long-term fit for the Chicago Bulls, but I do think that he is going to help the team win some basketball games if they were to go after him in free agency. And I also think that he does provide some toughness as well on both ends of the floor. You have to be a willing defender, especially if you're going to play for the Miami Heat. And so his numbers last season: 21.7 points per game, 3.5 with the rebounds, 2.5 with the assists per game, 1.1 with the steals per game, and he shot 47%, and it was 38% from downtown this last season. And so solid numbers for Norman Powell. You guys let me know in the comments here, would you want to see the Chicago Bulls go out and sign Norman Powell? And so next, taking a look at another player that has been linked to the Chicago Bulls, and that is John Collins. And so this comes from Clutch Points, and this is Brett Siegel. He says that the Spurs and Bulls are both potential suitors for John Collins in free agency, sources told Brett Siegel. And so he says this: there have been some talk of Collins being linked to the Timberwolves, but after trading for LaMelo, Minnesota won't be able to offer the recent LA Clippers forward what other teams can. Sources say the Chicago Bulls and San Antonio Spurs are two prominent teams frequently mentioned among league circles as suitors for Collins. All right. So starting with John Collins, and I think just looking at the things that you can't measure in stats, he was in the Eastern Conference Finals with the Atlanta Hawks. And so I do have to give him some credit there. And, this team is starting at the ground floor. And so certainly they want to get there. And I think much like Norman Powell, when you're talking about players that have gone deep in the playoffs or won the championship, I do think that that experience does help your younger team. And so that's the first thing that I think John Collins would bring there from an experience standpoint. The next thing that I would say here is that he's a lob threat. And so I think that because of that, he certainly fits everything that is going on in the backcourt with the Bulls. And so Josh Giddey, Trey Jones, and even the forwards as well, because I think when you take a look at Caleb Wilson and what he was able to do with Henry, Vassar, and the way that they were able to throw lobs back and forth to one another, I think that John Collins could benefit off of that. And then also, too, if this team is looking to play fast, which I do think that we're going to see this team get into the transition as much as possible, we'll find out what the playing style is going to look like. But I think that he's a player that really excels in transition and being a slasher. Now, he does have a little bit of a post game. It's not something to go ahead and say, okay, well, that's the main part of his game, but he can give you a little bit of post work. He also, too, can knock down shots as well. So he can stretch the floor a little bit as far as knocking down three-point shots. And so he is 28 years old. This last season, 13.6 points per game, 5.3 with the rebounds per game, 1 assist a game, 0.9 with the steals per game, 55.2% from the field, and then he shot 40.6 from three. And so, again, he can knock down the three-point shot here. And so John Collins bringing you some experience, a lot of that experience coming with the Atlanta Hawks. He did play with the Utah Jazz for a couple seasons there before he was traded over to the Los Angeles Clippers. And in his career, he has been a 21.6 point scorer in his career. So he can go out and get you 20 points in the season. Before, when he was with the Los Angeles Clippers, he actually averaged 19 points with them. And so he can get you a bucket. So you guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking about John Collins. Is this a player you would like to see the Bulls go after in free agency? And so next, I want to go ahead and shift focus here, and we're going to take a look at this from a couple different angles. And so first, we're going to take a look at just spark plug scores. And so these are players that are just microwaves. Like, you can just get some instant offense with them. And I certainly think that the Bulls are going to need that, especially off the bench here. And so there are 3 players that come to mind here that really fit with what the Chicago Bulls potentially could be looking at. And the first player, that is going to be Anfernee Simons here. And so we know who he is. He obviously was with the Chicago Bulls, and we really didn't get a chance to see very much of him because he had the injured wrist. But in the time that he did play with the Chicago Bulls, we saw somebody that was an elite scorer. He can score from all 3 levels. And so certainly he's going to help stretch the floor if you need somebody to knock down just 3-point shots, but he can do it on ball or off ball. He's shown that he can play in a winning situation. He can start, he can come off the bench. Like, there's so many things to like about him. The question is he going to want to go back to a contender? And so again, instant offense, 27 years old, 14.3 points per game last season, 2.5 rebounds per game, 2.4 with the assist, and 0.5 with the steals per game. Shot 44% from the field and 38.5% from downtown. And so defensively, not the greatest player, but on offense, man, this guy is a spark plug scorer. And so next, I wanted to go ahead and take a look at Colin Sexton. And so look, Colin Sexton, again, he's another player that I absolutely think that the Chicago Bulls could go after if they're looking for somebody that, again, that can just knock down shots, be instant offense for you. And so we got a chance to see his leadership. And so I think that that's one of the things that really stands out with Colin Sexton was the fact that he just led. This is a guy that can come off the bench. He can start for you, so you don't have to necessarily worry about that. He will attack the rim. He's always trying to get to the free throw line, and he's a big ball of energy. And I think that that is absolutely what this team is going to need as they try to build their identity. And so wouldn't mind bringing him in as well. And so also, too, to be clear, I think that these players would be players that you're bringing in on a short-term type of contract. And I'm even talking about Norman Powell and John Collins. And so that's player number 2. Player number 3 here, And I think that it depends really on what happens here and what you're trying to do. But I think that maybe Jordan Clarkson would also be a player that maybe you're thinking about bringing in to come off your bench to get you some buckets here. And so you're looking at a player that he was the sixth man of the year with the Utah Jazz. And so he certainly can be, a spark off the bench. He's coming off an NBA championship. And so that kind of goes into that experience and how that kind of plays into your roster. So 34 years old, 8.6 points per game just this last season, 1.8 with the rebounds per game, 1.3 with the assists per game, 0.8 with the steals per game, and then 45.1% from the field and 32.7% from downtown. So he can shoot a lot better than that. But, this is a guy that has been a crafty scorer. And so maybe you're taking a look at him as a spark plug scorer. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking about these players that potentially could come off the bench or start for you, but they just give you buckets. And so the next tier of players that we're taking a look at are 3-point specialists. And so these players simply knock down 3-point shots. And so the first player is going to be Luke Kennard. Look, Luke Kennard, an excellent 3-point shooter. And so he actually led the league in 3-point percentage this last season. You're looking at a player that he also can get to the mid-range. I think he's very good as far as running the pick and roll as well. 30 years old, 8.4 points per game, 2.3 with the rebounds per game, 2.2 with the assists per game, 0.7 with the steals per game, shot 53.5% from the field, and 47.8% from downtown. And so look, if you have somebody that is putting pressure on the rim and he's open, look, it's going down. You can just count it as a bucket. So Luke Kennard may be a player that the Bulls are taking a look at if they're looking for a 3-point specialist. That other player is going to be Tim Hardaway Jr. And so, look, Tim Hardaway Jr., what I love about him is that he's a solid role player. I think that you got a chance to see that when he was with the Detroit Pistons. You also got a chance to see that, too, when he was with the Denver Nuggets. And so wouldn't mind having him on the roster. This is a guy that he will put the basketball on the deck. And so, I think that you saw him maybe go to the basket a little bit more when he was playing in college for Michigan. But, I still like the fact that he will put the ball on the deck and go to the rim from time to time. But I think for the most part, you're looking at a player that's just going to give you steady play and really be able to space the floor with knocking down shots. And so he's 34 years old, 13.5 points per game, 2.6 with the rebounds per game, 1.4 with the assists per game, 0.5 with the steals, 44.7% from the field, and he shot 40.7% from three. And so again, these are 3-point specialists that maybe the Chicago Bulls could go after. Next, we're going to take a look at players that I feel like that are two-way players. And so they're going to give you the ability to not only score the basketball, but these are guys that can also lock up and defend. And I think that they bring a bit of like grit and toughness to the team as well. And so, the first player is going to be Quentin Grimes. Look, I think that Quentin Grimes absolutely can be that player. And I just go back and look at the time that Quentin Grimes played at the University of Houston. And I've talked about this before. If you're going to play for Coach Sampson, you have to play defense. And when you go back and you take a look at what he did at the University of Houston, he was terrific there. He could score, he could defend, and I think he shows that grittiness here in the NBA. And I love the fact that he's finally getting an opportunity. Now, I think that he just needs to get into a situation like this with the Bulls where he gets some game time, he gets somebody to invest in him. You're getting in at the ground floor with this team really trying to find its identity. I think that Quentin Grimes could be a pleasant surprise in free agency for the Chicago Bulls and a real two-way player here. And so, I think that at 26 years old, you're getting a player that certainly can stretch the floor. And so he shot 34.1% from downtown. He shot 43.9% from the field, and he averaged 13.4 points per game. And so again, that's with the Philadelphia 76ers, all, the players that they had and everything else. He wasn't the main focus out there. And so 3.6 with the rebounds per game, 3.3 with the assists per game, 0.9 with the steals per game, 0.4 with the blocks per game as well. And so a tough player that I think would bring some grittiness here to the Chicago Bulls, Quentin Grimes, and I think you could probably get him on a good deal as well. Next, Kelly Oubre. And so, look, I think that Kelly Oubre would be a terrific pickup for the Bulls. I think much like Norman Powell, you just get a professional. Like, you get a guy that's been in several different situations. He's played with several different stars. He's been a top pick in the NBA draft. And so, he's had that experience as well. And I think that that's something that maybe Caleb Wilson and then also to Dalen Swain, they can talk to him about that. And so that's, during his time with the Washington Wizards when they drafted him. And so, look, several different situations, several different roles, never complained. And this guy brings toughness. He's a solid role player. You're getting a solid 3-and-D type of player. And so wouldn't mind him on a short-term type of contract. And so 30 years old, 14.1 points per game, 5 rebounds a game, 1.6 with the assists per game, 1.4 with the steals per game, 0.5 with the blocks per game, 46.7% from the field, and he shot 36% from downtown. And so 2 players that I think could really bring the Chicago Bulls a two-way ability. And so you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking there. And lastly, I thought we'd go into a little bit of a bonus here, and we're going to take a look at just players that really, they have some upside. And I think that these players are players that you're looking at this and you're saying, okay, they've shown flashes. Do you want to sign them potentially and just bank on their development process? And so, one of those players being Ousmane Dieng. And so with Ousmane Dieng, here's a player that he's just now coming off of restricted free agency because the Milwaukee Bucks at the time of this podcast recording have actually not picked up the option on him. And so he will be an unrestricted free agent. And so the thing about him is that he showed some flashes. And so here's a former not number one, but a first round pick in the NBA draft. And so he actually was picked number 11 in the 2022 draft. And so in Houston, he had a solid game with the Milwaukee Bucks. And so he scored 36 points and he had 10 assists in that game. And so shown some flashes as a player, but I just really think that he needs to get a chance to play. And so do the Chicago Bulls maybe take a chance on a player that has shown some flashes here, 23 years old, 7.6 points per game, 3.2 with the rebounds, 2.4 with the assists per game, 0.4 with the steals per game, 42.2% from the field, and 33.1 from downtown. And again, that is Ousmane Dieng for the Milwaukee Bucks. And so he was with OKC when he was drafted. He was actually with the Bulls, but they traded him for Nick Richards. And so let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking about with him, as he is a free agent, as the Milwaukee Bucks are not going to bring him back, as they did not pick up his restricted free agent option there. And so next, another player is going to be Brandon Williams. And so, I think that there's several players, or not several players, several teams that are going to be interested in Brandon Williams, because with the Dallas Mavericks, he got a chance to play some meaningful minutes, and he played very well. He actually had a career season. And so 13 points per game, 2.9 with the rebounds, 3.9 with the assists per game, 0.9 with the steals per game, 47.2% from the field, and he shot 23.2% from downtown. And so not very much of a three-point shooter, but finds ways to get to the basket. He also, too, can get to the mid-range somewhat there, can run the pick and roll as well. And again, this is another player that you're banking on the upside. This is if, Bryson Graham and the Chicago Bulls want to lean in a little bit on the development side, and you probably are looking at something where it's going to be cost effective as well. But, I'm not sure if the Chicago Bulls would lean in on this right now, especially with what we saw that happened there in the second round. One of the things that Bryson Graham talked about is he wanted to have roster flexibility. And sometimes, that means that you go away from maybe some of the development or the project players that you might take in the second round. And so not sure what direction the Bulls will go in free agency, but these two players are out there as far as upside free agents. And lastly, another upside free agent for the Chicago Bulls, I think it's going to be Jonathan Kuminga. And so Jonathan Kuminga, looks like that the Atlanta Hawks did not pick up the option on him. And so he is going to be an unrestricted free agent. And he has been linked to the Chicago Bulls before, but he also links to the Chicago Bulls again because Bryson Graham came over from the Atlanta Hawks, and he helped, obviously make that trade to get him over from the Golden State Warriors. And so perhaps maybe Jonathan Kuminga comes over to the Chicago Bulls. And so this last season, he averaged 12.3 points per game, 5.3 rebounds per game, and 47.6% from the field. And so he's got some upside really I think as a two-way type of player, he's really never put it together. I think that it's been inconsistent, and I think that that's really the issue with him. It's just, can he lock in defensively? And also, too, you just wonder, can he be more of an off-ball type of player? That's going to be another thing. But he is a scorer. He is a slasher. And I think that he played solid with the Atlanta Hawks, but maybe this is another player that maybe the Bulls would take a look at here in free agency. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking. Once again, we just took a look here at just some free agents that could have some solid upside. Do the Bulls want to bank in on just the development side of this? Maybe the Bulls would take a look at these players. And so again, Kuminga, you got Ousmane Dieng, and then also too, you have Brandon Williams as players that maybe the Bulls take a look at there. As far as the two-way potential, we took a look at Quentin Grimes and Kelly Oubre. And so those are two-way players, defensive, and then also too offensively, what you're going to get with them. And then you have the three-point specialists. We have Luke Kennard and Tim Hardaway Jr. And then as far as the spark plug scores, we got Anfernee Simons, we have Colin Sexton. We also had Jordan Clarkson that I put on this list as well. Let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking about any of those players. And then as far as the players that were linked to the Chicago Bulls, we have John Collins and Norman Powell. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Players that could potentially fit with the Chicago Bulls. And so let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. We will take a look at the centers and the power forwards next, before free agency opens here on Tuesday. And by the way, free agency is set for Tuesday, and it's going to be at 6 p.m. Eastern time is when negotiations will begin. Teams cannot officially sign players or consummate trades until Monday, July the 6th at 12:01 p.m. Eastern time. And so that's when everything will go final. And so again, Tuesday, June 30th at 6 p.m. Eastern time, that is when free agency negotiations will begin, but everything will become finalized on July the 6th. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking. And look, as we always say, go Bulls, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.